So we all know fragile people. We all know we have to walk on eggshells around fragile people. There are no fragile people that are exponential leaders, that are warm, decent human beings, because it becomes more about the me than the we. And there's a couple different models I'll talk about. Consciousness, there's life happens to me, being a victim, or all the way through by me, through me, to as me. And in that model of consciousness, you have really these building blocks that if you recognize that you're in a victim mode, then you can really say, okay, what would I do differently that I don't play victim? Then you would say, I'm going to do by me, that you actually start authoring your life. Does that make sense? And we're going to talk about writing your own hero's journey, that you are your hero in your story. But when you're authoring your life, then it goes to through me, where you realize it's not how you do something, but it's who you do it with. And it's important to choose the people around you. And the last is as me, where you actually, as like a group, you create a massive transformative purpose that you start transforming everyone around you. But that equals the same model. If I drive that down, the first victim is very fragile. Someone that is by me is actually very vulnerable because they're looking for validation. Someone that really does it through me becomes resilient because it's not all relying on them. They're actually starting to have other people help them do things. And we'll get into this more and more. You guys will inherently know this because you're going to facilitate this to each other. And then the last one is as me, you're really anti-fragile because you're living in a bigger purpose. And I would say I'm starting to live in a bigger purpose. I'm involved in probably 5 or 6 companies now that as I lead them, I bring energy and attract the people I need to, including every one of you here, if that makes sense. And that's part of like living into a future that you want to live into. And that makes me anti-fragile because if one of those fall apart, I have several others. And we're going through some testy times. Actually, Murphy and Forbes are part of a group that we're going through some testy times of whether it's going to be successful or not. Yet our own ability to be anti-fragile, to focus on it, is ability to actually think bigger than maybe the problems that we have. So then it's like, let's choose our obstacles, which we'll talk about later on. But these are all like little mental models. So we'll talk about behavioral economics a lot, which I guess, does everyone understand what behavioral economics are? They're like nudges, filters, anchors, how you condition yourself. It's the idea of scheduling time to go to the gym and just going. It's your own behavioral nudge, which we'll talk about habits and how that fulfills your purpose. Filters is how you see the world. Right now, whether you know or not, your cognitive biases filter a lot of things out. Well, we're going to find a way to unveil some of those cognitive biases so that we can actually look out on the horizon and start seeing opportunities more. And an example of that is frequency illusion. Does anyone know what frequency illusion is? No, not you, Forbes. Forbes has literally sat at coffee for 2.5 years. I hope you got it. Anybody else? Frequency illusion. Murphy. So it's the idea of when you buy a new car that you thought you bought something very original, right? Yeah. This is Forbes' experience. And then he drove around the corner and saw a black 150 and then 3 the next block. And then you don't see things unless you bring them into your awareness. And those cognitive biases are generational, epigenetic, meaning we unfortunately inherit historical epigenetic. So it's figuring out how do you condition yourself so that you can actually get to your conscious mind instead of your subconscious mind. Foresight. So the idea of the ability to kind of predict your future, we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to give you some tools that really you will be able to live into your future with. Neuroscience, we'll talk a lot about how the mind works and why it plays tricks on you to keep you safe. It was a 10,000-year-old tool that at the time, when a lion was on the savannah, fight, flight, or freeze, It gave you instant, it shut down all of your other senses and everything just to put all your blood, even your hands get cold and your feet get warm because it's actually your body is getting ready for you to run. And that happens, unfortunately, now we don't have the stresses that we did then of life or death everywhere we walk, yet we still live in that. We still actually have that run, some more than other. And those are fragile people, like, because at the end of the day, like, you're not able to control everything. Understand what you can control and not control. Psychology, we'll cover a lot. Ancient wisdom. What's interesting is I studied in this 15-year journey of literally being myself with a group of executives overseas, Google, and I literally just studied what did this happen today. And I took dubious and Forbes notes. I had 1,200 pages of notes when we first met to write this book. And what I realized is we didn't invent this stuff, and they actually knew it 2,000 years ago. We're just now, through the dark ages and through epigenetics and our own families and our own limiting beliefs and all those things that kind of gotten us to here. It'll be about leadership, creativity, which we call it creative leadership. And the idea of that is, it's not that most of you are actually in a creative space and maybe that attracted you to this, but it really is about that you can create whatever you want. And creativity is the idea to think of something and actually make it come into existence. And I'm going to explain the neuroscience as well as the quantum physics, which we'll get into it, of why that happens. And part of me bringing quantum physics into this is really to expand your mind, because I want you to get back to childlike. This is like the heavy part of learning, but this is going to be hopefully a lot of play for you. And some other things may bubble up that you will have to figure out as we kind of dig into things. Storytelling, which I know we have a couple of storytelling experts here. Innovation, design thinking, systems thinking, purpose. We're going to really talk a lot about purpose, because if we don't have purpose, we're really fragile. We are actually unable to get to be anti-fragile. Growth hacking, emerging technologies, exponential habits, self-expression, which is the whole goal of this, is that you find something that you want to express yourself through as a project, which we'll talk beyond this. Neuro-linguistic programming. Anybody know NLP? So NLP is the idea of how we use our words, how we use our language, how we influence and persuade people. The brain actually, you can actually learn a lot about what someone else is thinking, as you know, NLP. And we'll kind of cover that in module 5, which we won't do this weekend. We'll do that beyond this weekend as we, figure out how the path is to get all the way through this material, which I'll go through exactly what you guys have committed to just in a second, because I don't think you all know. Quantum physics, I said, science. We'll actually talk about science.